Education is preparation for reparations.
Our final speaker, who is Esther Xosei, who is a jury consult, scholar, activist, and decolonial reparationist advancing planet repairs. And she works under a holistic framework uniting cognitive, reparatory, and environmental justice within the international social movement for African reparations. If you have been around the reparations movement in the UK, she is somebody who needs very little introduction. She's the co-vice chair of PARCOE, and she leads the grassroots advocacy and international solidarity efforts for Pan-African reparations, coordinating the Stop the Mangamizi campaign and co-founding in INOSAAR. And as I was saying earlier, the Stop the Mangamizi campaign is one of the secretariats for the all-party parliamentary group on reparations, and they were very clearly through their campaign pushed the reparations campaign into Parliament. And we're very, very pleased to hear from Sister Esther today. One of my worst crimes, apparently, according to one right-wing publication, is that I refer to her as Sister Esther. And if that's my crime, then I'm good.
Okay, greetings. I actually don't want to say too much because I feel it's important that we get to have a conversation. So I'll try and be very brief. But I do feel the need to say a few words. Thank you for the introduction, Belle, and also greeting my fellow distinguished panelists who we all work together very well and have done over a number of years. And I think what's really important in this space of reparations is the relationships that we build. The relationships that we build with each other. And sometimes we fall out with each other. We have conflicts, we have tensions, we have differences. We don't always agree. But it's about the fact that we are prepared to journey together. And so today is framed as a dialogue on Pan-Africanism and reparations, and a dialogue amongst the protagonists. And it's important for me to emphasize that, because as we've heard, and in particular I'm drawing back to the first panel that we had, and some of the comments, for instance, from Professor Hakim Adi and Professor Gus John, around what is the role of the people? Where are our people in this dialogue? Our people who are the makers of our story, so-called history, our story. And many of the spaces that we have where this dialogue is now taking place, they're very shallow. There are limitations of time, and this is always the case. And what's happening is we have a moving train, but who is moving the train and which direction is it going in? Yeah, and how can this train move without the masses of our people actually steering that train? And we're not yet there. So I'm a great advocate of Amilcar Cabral's message to us that we should tell no lies and claim no easy victory, that we must expose, the truth, the lies whenever they are told to us. And we mustn't claim easy victories on reparations and the unfinished tasks of Pan-Africanism. And that is why in my introductory comments I spoke about doing that critical self-analysis and reflection as to where we are at and how we took deviations in our path. And how, in some instances, that cancer of betrayal that Amilcar Cabral spoke about in relation to the deposing of Asajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, how that has also plagued us as a people. And what I'm saying now is nothing new, because I find myself continually echoing the voices and the words of our ancestors and ancestresses that we don't listen to. And each generation repeats. We repeat. Each time we create new spaces. Yes, we create new recognition. And yes, there is a growing movement that is coalescing together. But again, I ask, what is our vision? What is the vision that is animating us? And our repair struggles and our struggles for Pan-Africanism. Because as has already been said on the first panel, we don't have a consensus on that. And that's what we need to recognise. And why creating spaces for that dialogue to happen are so critical. And in the Stop the Maangamizi campaign, we have been advocating for this dialogue. But not for us. We have our own views as campaign members, of course. But for you, our people. And we hear about what CARICOM are doing, we hear about a 10-point plan. What was your role in developing the 10-point plan? Many of us are Caribbean nationals. Where is the recognition of us? What kind of governments do we have? And how all of a sudden do we have governments feeling that they can lead this struggle without the people? How? How? And I find myself feeling like a broken record because what I will not change this fundamental standpoint because it is correct, it is just. And each and every one of us in this room are representatives of your ancestry, your line. Where is the space for them to be heard? And that's what some of us are fighting for. And we've come up with a proposal around an all-party parliamentary commission of inquiry for truth and reparatory justice. That is part of the reason why we lobbied our sister Bell here in terms of setting up the all-party parliamentary group for African reparations, to continue that, because there's no process that we can engage in at the moment as diasporas. We cannot just sit as bystanders to international negotiations happening by CARICOM states or AU states. We cannot. We lead our own struggle. And the example that was given of Haiti demonstrates that. That was reparations in action, or what we call applied reparations, where the people took power. And it was a pan-African endeavour. So where are we learning the lessons of that story? And how is it influencing the strategies and tactics and the movement building that we are doing today? So we're not yet there. Because many of our people have become accustomed to being bystanders. We're sitting back waiting for someone else to bring us, and some people literally see it this way, our reparations money. Where is that struggle against power? We've heard, we could fill this whole university with the volumes of research and documentation and speeches that we have made over the decades from 1900. But yet, why is it we still are not at a place where we can access the resources that our ancestors and ancestresses struggled for and have those restituted to us so that we can live our lives in full dignity? So we need to implement a participatory reparation strategy, because there's a lot of talk about international law. I know a lot about international law, and I practice it. But I practice it in the heart of our communities. The people who are the sources of that law, who resist oppression and the legacies of the Maangamizi every day. And in international law, it is recognized that states, including African and Caribbean states, must uphold international law principles. And one of those principles is the right for the survivors to be heard. To be heard. How are we being heard? Who is creating those mechanisms? And we've heard about many today. But do you go to these forums? Do the people that go, are we hearing? Is there a community gathering and consensus and report back and accountability building? No. So we have to repair even the very processes of repair that we are seeking. Yeah? And it begins with us convening our Pan-African Reparations Rebellion groundings. We're doing one in Bristol on the 17th of May at the Malcolm X Centre to hear your voices. It begins, and then we'll go into September with the Pan-African People's Assembly on African reparations. We need these grassroots mechanisms so that when we go into Parliament, we have a strong voice. And we are harmonising our diversity of perspectives. How can we be listened to when we ourselves are not articulating that we have a right to be heard? We are advocating family truth-telling, what we call ma'atzo as a jurors, which are circles where in your family or your community or your group that we sit down and we have these dialogues so that we can canvass the will of our people. We need a true representative democracy. That's what we need. And nothing less than that will suffice. So anyone who makes you feel that all you need to do is be a spectator or cheerleader of them while they go and negotiate deals, they're not being honest to you. And if we know anything about what has happened to the best of our leaders, we know that we need to protect and safeguard the integrity of this struggle. We need our masses on board, and we need to learn the lessons that we are already seeing. Let's just take Namibia, okay, where the government of Namibia and Germany came up with some reconciliation agreement that excluded the Nama and Ova Herero survivors of genocide. This is what happens when we make the state absolute. And they had to go and resort to international law and have about 7 special rapporteurs who have actually called out this practice. We don't want this practice. So let us not stand by whilst the movement capture, the elite capture, and even state capture is happening. What kind of states do we have? We heard mention of the Alliance of Sahel States. What was the response of ECOWAS and the African Union to that? But we're talking about Pan-Africanism and reparations and eliminating the borders. And when our people try and do that, what is the response? What is the response in living time? Okay? So we have to tell truth to each other in the spirit of our familyhood and our discussions, because we want to get somewhere. And so there are a number of recommendations that we've received, and we've been asking for people, and it's truly so many. And I just want to share one or two in my closing. So one of the recommendations that has come up is around us in the diaspora. And even in truth, our brothers and sisters on the continent, because we assume that Africans on the continent have sovereignty. They do not. How is it we have compensation being paid to white farmers in Zimbabwe? Let's look at what's going on around land reform in South Africa, in Kenya, in Namibia. This principle of willing buyer, willing seller is actually reinforcing our dispossession today. So African people at home and abroad need to enforce new legal remedies, and one that we have been advocating coming out of ENGOCAR, the Europe-wide NGO Consultative Council for African Reparations, is the right to Africa. We have a right to a say in our mother continent, whether we live there or we live here or anywhere else in the diaspora. And no government, no corporation or bunch of elites should be determining what should happen to our motherland and denying us access to the lion's share of the wealth that is our stolen inheritance. A right to Africa. And that must also be accompanied by recognizing that in the diaspora, we're not represented by African Union states or CARICOM states. So when we're killed and when we are deported, who is supporting us? Who comes to our defense? Yeah. But we are diaspora. Yeah. So we are also pushing for recognition of non-territorial autonomy. These are not new ideas. Our mothers, Claudia Jones and others, were arguing this, meaning that we should have an access to land and the resources to build the institutions of repair that we require, both on the continent and in the diaspora. And we form ourselves into what we call a Ma'atubuntu Jama, a collective community that is self-repairing based on the principles of Ma'at and Ubuntu, here and in the diaspora. And we link organically with those communities on the continent of Africa, doing the same, like in the Alliance of Sahel States that we call Sankofa Homes. So land is the basis of all freedom. But many of us are landless and we don't even recognize the value of land in terms of wealth and property, but not as belonging, not as claiming ownership and possession, but as stewardship and the right to restore right relationships. Because colonization has created this global climate and ecological crisis that is most impacting us and our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean and other small island states are very at risk. So we need a model of repair that recognizes that we have to rebuild our world and stop the destruction of our world. Reparations is a world remaking project. It's not about give us some money to coexist in your world and you devalue that currency. We want our world, but you know what? True reparations is not something anyone will give to us. It's something we have to take.
Thank you very much.
Education is preparation for reparations.